Okay, folks, welcome to session E1 of the 2023 Online Writing Centers Association Virtual Conference. My name is Amanda, and I am a member of the OWCA Conference Committee, as well as being one of the website coordinators. I will be moderating this session with Janelle, and Janelle will be managing the technology side of things. During this session, we will have Julie Johnson Archer, Bethany Bibb, and Ali Johnston facilitating a workshop on the title Ready, Set, Go, an administrative approach to supporting multimodal tutoring online. And as you come in, please feel free to introduce yourself in the chat. All right. First, as we get started, let's just take note of some basic participation guidelines. First, please note that we are recording today's session. If you have a question, but you would prefer not to be recorded, please feel free to use the chat to communicate. Next, please note that we have sign language interpreters with us today from More Interpreting LLC. The interpreters will be spotlighted during the talk, but if you cannot see the interpreters at any point, please send a direct message via chat to the moderators. We ask that you refrain from turning on your own audio unless you are speaking. However, please feel free to post comments and questions into the chat at any time. And finally, here is a refresher on how to get to the chat. Select the chat button at the bottom of the Zoom screen and a new window will appear with the chat window. I'm going to go ahead and hand things over to the presenters at this point.
Thank you. And thank you to everybody who is able to spend some time with us today. We're so glad you could join us. So welcome. This presentation brings together three perspectives from directors of three writing center contexts involving online and hybrid tutoring sessions. This workshop is for participants preparing new or evaluating current multimodal services, and we will guide you in reflecting on your multimodal readiness at the center, tutor, and session level. And we'll provide a framework for determining where we all might better prepare for multimodal work. We will introduce ourselves throughout the session. Just wanted to let you know we will be introducing ourselves. For this presentation, we interpret multimodality based on the definition provided by the New London Group, where multiple modes are layered together to create meaning, while also acknowledging the various modalities or platforms used to conduct tutoring sessions, including synchronous, asynchronous, and in person. So here is a plan for our time together. After these introductions and overview, we will have three parts. First, we'll talk about center readiness and have an activity number one. And then we'll talk about tutor readiness with technology skills and have an activity number two. And then we'll have tutor readiness talking about the rhetorical framework and have a third activity. So we do have time for individual reflection throughout the first part of our workshop. And then after we finish activity three, we'll have a group discussion and Q&A before we wrap it up. So let's begin.
Thanks, Julie. Hi, I'm Bethany Bibb. I am a white woman with brown hair. My pronouns are she, her, and I'm coordinator of the now hybrid Graduate Writing Center at Southern Utah University, SUU, located on the ancestral lands of Nungwu, or Southern Paiute people. Graduate programs here are primarily online or hybrid, and we offer synchronous and asynchronous sessions. We have peer and professional consultants, some working remotely and some hosting online sessions from the undergraduate Writing Center's computer lab. The first part of this workshop addresses center readiness or capacity to support multimodal online tutoring. As we go, I'd like you to consider these guiding questions. First, what type of online writing center are you running or working to build? Fully online, hybrid, etc. And second, what do you and your center need to know, have, or do to support multimodal tutoring? In 2020, many of us experienced the pandemic pivot to hybrid or fully online tutoring, often with little or no time to weigh options. We had to prioritize expediency and efficiency. How quickly could we make the change? And what modalities worked well in a pinch? We needed solutions that were fast, free, or low cost, and fairly easy to use. We soon realized that some students couldn't use some modalities due to lack of or limited access. For example, quote, limited access to strong internet connection, whether because of lower income, disenfranchisement, or rural geography, end quote, Najesla 2020. Even accessibility features can't ensure access. As the pandemic subsides, we can be more intentional about our multimodal online tutoring services. We must shift our focus to students and pedagogy and assess our modalities and technologies in terms of access, reliability, accessibility, and usability for our students and our tutors. Stewart 2021, Cecil Lemkin and Johnson 2021, Martinez and Olson 2015. We can apply the following quotation to Writing Center work as well. Quote, the key point here is not that any of these tools are inherently problematic, but that instructors should think first about pedagogical considerations, learning goals, and student realities rather than starting with available technologies, end quote. Shepard 2021, page 67. When assessing center readiness for new online tutoring services or reassessing current programs, we need to start with and at our centers and assess four main considerations: students, locations and environments, modalities, and technologies and equipment. For example, at my institution, many graduate students and some tutors don't have access to or can't afford reliable internet, or even some software programs. Professional tutors don't qualify for student discounts on Adobe software and might not be able to work on PDF assignments if they can't afford the software themselves. Limited access limits the modalities we can offer and students can use. So I must take all these factors into account when I assess or reassess our multimodal online tutoring services. And now it's your turn. For this first activity, you'll begin to assess or reassess your own centers. From the OWCA conference program website, find and download our workshop activities handout, now titled Archer et al. Handout. For activity 1, choose 2 of the 4 main considerations and answer the questions for them. You'll have about 10 minutes before we move on to Julie's part. At the end of our workshop, you can share your responses in the group discussion. And I believe Ellie has shared a link to that website for you in the chat. And Julie's sharing her screen so that you can see a walkthrough of where to find that activity. As you work on the activity, feel free to turn your cameras off if you would like. Let us know if you have any questions or technical difficulties in the chat, and we'll reconvene in about 9 or 10 minutes. Thanks.
Okay, find a stopping point for activity 1. And if you'd like to keep working on the activity, it is meant for you to take back with you, so you can keep working on it at another time too. Hi everyone, I am Julie, and I am the director of a fully remote online writing center for Abilene Christian University's online campus. I'm a white woman with dark blonde hair and I wear glasses. A little bit more context about my center. I have a team of professional tutors. In other words, they're not peer tutors or student workers, which influences our work together. So I want us to think for a few minutes about tutors' technical and logistical readiness for multimodal tutoring in online settings. With so many potential technologies as shown in this word cloud, from presentations, videos, infographics, and more. How administrators gauge tutors' readiness and prepare them for these tutoring tasks is important. Because, quote, there is no substitute for writing center training for multimodal composition. While other forms of training are beneficial, including workshops and English classes, they are not as effective. Writing centers should consider how they can incorporate multimodal training into orientations, continued training, writing center classes, and more, end quote. This quote is from Joseph Cheadle's 2020 article titled Multimodal Composition in Writing Centers, the Practical, the Problems, and the Potential. In it, he captured 18 writing centers' preparedness in 2017, published in 2020. One key finding was a lack of technical and rhetorical training in writing centers. So I'm going to focus on the first aspect, the technical aspect. One suggestion I have is to start with a brief survey for yourself or your center's consultants. Ask what technical training do your tutors need to be confident in the technologies required for multimodal tutoring. Based on your findings from a survey of tutors' technical skills, you can also ask tutors to train the staff, as Del Russo and Shapiro 2019 suggested. Before we move to activity 2, let's consider a few more things. First, consider your context's technologies. Microsoft Word, PowerPoint, Google Slides, Google Docs, Zoom, Adobe Acrobat. These are a few that we use in my context, and I welcome you to type in more in the chat room if others come to your mind about technologies that you see in your writing centers. WC Online, yes. And that has even more capabilities. Zoom embedded in there, whiteboards. I haven't used whiteboards in WC. Screencast-O-Matic, yes. It has recently been renamed ScreenPal, but we use that as well. I should have listed that. Another person uses Microsoft Teams, okay? Yeah, we use a lot of Google Drive in my institution, but that's not everybody's experience. Slack, yes. I know of some writing centers who use Slack, among the tutors especially. Oh, these are new to me. Students working with Overleaf and latex, especially for graduate students. If you'd like, you can tell us more, Allie, what those are. Okay, great. We're going to, oh, Discord, great. You guys have so many ideas. Keep them coming. So thinking of those technologies is a great thing, first thing to consider. Let's keep going, considering your context further. So in fully online contexts like mine, tutors will be providing feedback in asynchronous or synchronous appointments. In hybrid contexts, Bethany brought up a good point that off-campus access to institutional software or technology might be limited. So we'll have to consider if there need to be policies in place to account for any of those limitations. For example, you might need to allow tutors extra time to provide robust feedback on multimodal compositions. Considering accessibility is another key aspect of technical training. So for example, closed captioning for video feedback is important. And this is another thing I'm going to elicit in the chat room. So share in the chat room if you've come up with a good way to provide closed captions on videos that you send to students. This is something I'm still working on, even in an online writing center, still working on it because it does require that extra labor and time and sometimes money if you have a subscription or buy a technology for closed captioning. On the textual level, of course, the tutors need to know how to insert comments in asynchronous settings, especially, also synchronous, how to insert comments on Word, PowerPoint, PDFs, etc. Okay, so I'm going to go off script now just to walk you through activity 2 on the handout. So if you added to activity 1, activity 2 may have been bumped down past page 2, which is great. So scroll down to activity 2. Assessing tutors' technical readiness for multimodal tutoring. First, we have a table followed by some questions, and we're going to give you some more time to work on this independently. The first column in the table is about those technologies that you use or that students use on their assignments as well. So for example, PowerPoint presentations. The second column asks, do you already offer technical training for this, for your tutors? Yes or no? In my case, no. If yes, you can write a little bit about the training, maybe assess if you need more. If no, you can think about what training might be necessary to develop in your context, what you would include in the training to build tutors' technical competence for tutoring those types of compositions. So in my case, an example for PowerPoint presentations might be to make a brief asynchronous video tutorial. That way it's available to tutors when they need it. And in that training, that video, I might show them how to access their institutional Microsoft account to download PowerPoint to their laptop, how to download and open slides, how to add comments, maybe how to create a screencast, maybe like ScreenPal, to give audio visual feedback, and then how to send that feedback to students in our context. Below the table, I've also got 3 more questions for you to consider. Take maybe one technology and/or training and think of the resources you need to be able to develop at least one of those trainings, and try to be specific about the amount of time, maybe the amount of money. It might take extra research, so this might be a project you work on after the session as well. The second question is who'd be involved in the training, and the third is crafting a tentative timeline for implementing the training. So we have about 7 or 8 minutes. Go ahead and take a little bit more independent time on activity 2.
Okay, so now we'll come back together. And hi, everyone. My name is Allie Johnston, and I'm a white woman with brown hair, and my pronouns are she, her. I'm finishing my second year at Austin Peay State University in Clarksville, Tennessee, as assistant professor and writing center director. And our writing center includes in-person and online synchronous and asynchronous sessions. So now we'll transition from Julie's discussion of tech needs to the tutor prep framework regarding rhetorical considerations for approaching a multimodal tutoring session in both online and hybrid sessions. So I'll walk you through a few texts and considerations, and then we'll conclude with a reflection prompt. So first, let's consider why it is important to prep our tutors for working with multimodal assignments beyond the technological implications and logistics that we face. So this is important because incorporating multimodal assignment training for tutors aligns with the field of Writing Center's larger goals of justice work and flexibility to support students of all learning styles. Furthermore, providing additional training to writing tutors to prepare them to work with students on multimodal projects allows them to begin the work of restoring justice, because the job of the tutor is to help human beings. From Fitzgerald and Inetta, 2016. So students sometimes show up in the Writing Center with an assignment that asks them to make a poster presentation for their biology course, a podcast for their English course, or a video for an education course. By coaching students on multimodal assignments and working students through the feelings of intimidation and the baggage of previous writing courses, the Writing Center teaches students to repurpose their existing skills and overcome obstacles in order to become confident, capable writers and composers. So additionally, while it is critical to prepare our tutors for the tech aspect of tutoring with multimodal assignments, we must also equip them with a larger rhetorical understanding of the multimodal assignments themselves. As Joseph Cheadle stated in 2020, the most significant area of training is in understanding the implications of technology on different rhetorical considerations. While respondents may feel comfortable commenting on things like visuals and presentation technology, they are much less confident in thinking about the intersections of technology with gender, race, sexual orientation, class, and national identity. There are both challenges and benefits to navigate when preparing tutors to deal with multimodal assignments. Many of these overlap with challenges that occur in any tutoring session, with alphabetic text or in an online hybrid setting as well. These challenges include tutors have varying levels of experience with multimodal assignments. Some tutors may have created these assignments in their coursework. Others may have consumed multimodal works before in their own lives, and some may have no experience in this area. Furthermore, multimodal assignments can range in software use, detail of technical application, and even in the medium selected, such as a podcast or a video versus a still image or a meme. However, this is not much different than the variety of alphabetic text essays we may see in tutoring sessions each day. Tutors are not expected to be experts of the content, and instead can utilize genre awareness. So it's important to remind tutors of their role in the tutoring session. They can participate as the audience member in the rhetorical triangle to give their perspective as a viewer, listener, or consumer of the work. As mentioned previously, it's critical to remind tutors of their role in these multimodal assignment tutoring sessions and build their self-confidence. Furthermore, we as administrators can take steps to have resources on hand for our tutors to reference. As Brian Hodson in 2022 recommends in a piece from the Canadian Writing Center Association, remind your tutors of the power of a play mindset. They can engage with students by having them try out options, practice together, and share opinions in a low-stakes, supportive environment. As a center, it's important to have digitally available resources on the following topics for equipping tutors in their role as a multimodal consumer: text and font, color theory, consistency of modes or blending modes, use of white space or pause for audio, and ultimately the partnership of alphabetic text and images. So now that we've discussed some of the scholarship and approaches of preparing our tutors for multimodal assignment tutoring, I want to give you a few minutes to reflect and consider these guiding questions. So we'll come back to these at the conclusion of our session, so you can just jot down your responses for now. We have roughly about 7 minutes. So reflect on your Writing Center's current support towards students with multimodal assignments. Would your tutors feel comfortable in assisting students with multimodal assignments, especially in an online format? You can consider synchronous and asynchronous platforms. If not, what are the major concerns of your tutors, and what aspects of multimodal assignments in the tutoring sessions make them uncomfortable? How can you build your tutor's confidence in participating as an audience member for a multimodal assignment? And finally, what steps can your center take to provide tutors with resources to support them in giving effective feedback for multimodal assignments? So once again, you can turn off your cameras and work independently for the next few minutes. So now we'd like to shift to a group discussion and just pose the question to you: what came up from working on these workshop activities? And you can share your thoughts or the way your center is preparing for multimodal tutoring, either in the chat or by unmuting.
I suppose I can get the conversation rolling. As I was kind of going through the handout, I realized that our training for tutors is pretty robust on the technology side, but perhaps the training for students needs to be increased a little bit more. Since we do use Teams, most students are familiar with the basics of getting on Teams now that the campus has moved mostly to Microsoft products and student orientation and advising is using Teams. But when it comes to how do you upload your file, how do you share your screen? Some of those things that we ask the students to do in sessions, that's where we've noticed the tutors have needed to take some time out of the session to instruct the students how to do that. It's worked well, but I could see for some students who may be anxious about the use of technology, that might be something that would discourage them from coming back to another online session if they were overwhelmed by the technology and maybe how little they understood or how much time was taken up with that side of it.
That's such a good point, Amanda. One that was kind of between the two things that Allie and I were discussing, not just technical training for the tutors, but allowing them to be able to effectively communicate to a student in the session, those technical aspects of the multimodal session. Thanks for sharing that.
And yes, Yvonne, we do use Teams. We are a Microsoft campus. We have Zoom available, but our IT department would like us to get away from using Zoom as much as we can and try to use Teams more. And if I'm being honest, I like some of the options that Teams has more than what Zoom provides.
That's very cool. Thank you, Amanda.
What else came up as you were working through the activities, either any of the three sections? Did anything else come up that you think, oh, I'm going to maybe develop this more? Or do you already have something that you think that would be valuable to share to the rest of us here?
I might say that one of the things that in listening and going through the questions and thinking recently about some of the students that have come through of this question, or I guess scenario of what do you do when you have a student who is just very technology illiterate? And, you know, are we, not only is the tutor trained enough, and as Amanda pointed out, like, are the students trained, but how does the tutor help the student who doesn't know the tech? You know, like there's almost that level of, you know, technology education that I think sometimes happens. And I'm just thinking of a recent scenario of a graduate student who's, you know, an older student who just absolutely could not use any sort of, she couldn't share her screen on Zoom. She couldn't do really much of anything on Microsoft Word. So I think that just kind of makes me think of, well, like, how do I prepare the tutors for that kind of scenario?
We've had similar situations, and I'm not saying this is always feasible, but we've tried to develop some resources where it's like, okay, the tutors know where to point them, maybe handouts that walk through, you know, text along with screenshots or visuals. And so then as we see more problems organically arise, trying to continually bulk up that resource. Now, I know that doesn't help in the moment, you know, when the tutor's trying to figure it out. But that is something that can help the tutors at least feel prepared where they're not isolated.
Erica, to your point, actually, we also have students who, you know, we have a lot of older students on our campus, and literally we've gone like old school, just on the phone, email your paper, and we'll be looking at it together, and then they can kind of make whatever edits, and then at the end of the session, you know, basically notes or whatever is emailed out, and that's worked. And the students are like, I'm not interested in learning any other new technology. We've tried it, it's not working. And very basic Zoom for, I guess, class, but that's pretty much it. And it's like, all right, then we'll meet you where you're at, and, you know, kind of go from there. So, and also, like, for some reason, other students where they'll have successfully used like WCA Online for the one-on-one consultants. We don't use Zoom, we just use their whatever platform. And then they manage to disable their microphone and video somehow. I don't know. And we've tried to troubleshoot, it doesn't work. So again, just on the phone. This is kind of where we've ended up. And it's worked for us.
We have a very similar situation, Ruth. So we put our phone numbers in the appointment form in WC Online if it's going to be a Zoom session. And so the student can choose to just give a phone call if needed. But also to that note, we also give out Google Voice numbers, not personal phone numbers. So just a little extra layer of protection for the tutors, and so that they're not getting, you know, phone calls and giving out their personal number if they don't want to.
Something that I was thinking about with the second activity, with the example that was given of kind of creating the brief asynchronous video tutorial, which I love that idea. But I was also like, man, I don't have time to make all of these materials. But why does it have to be me? You know, that this would be a great opportunity for tutors to get a chance, particularly if they have kind of knowledge in particular technologies, a great kind of professional development and leadership kind of opportunity for them to create resources. I have to remember that sometimes. Sometimes I'm like, oh, I have to kind of create all of this. But I think that having tutors be responsible for creating some of these resources and leading some of these trainings was just something I was thinking about with that activity.
Yeah, thank you for reminding us of that, Kim. I think it would be helpful too for tutors if they're wanting to develop their video creation skills or they're feeling at all uncomfortable. That would be a safe also way to practice, and it's just going out to tutors, so it's kind of low stakes. And then someone, Amanda in the chat, you have a tutor who used to work at the IT help desk, so you've asked her to make some tutorial materials. Yeah, great. It's so good to have tutors lean into their skills and expertise and bring it from other places, especially IT when we're talking about multimodal assignments.
I have like kind of a similar question, I think, to what my comment was earlier. How, I guess, in depth in certain tech multimodal pieces do you ask your tutors to be? So I'm just thinking like right now, this one student, she like couldn't do the table of contents in Microsoft Word and had trouble doing like the page numbers. So things that aren't really like quote unquote writing, but a part of sort of this dissertation that she's doing. So she came to us and she also came to us because our IT department said, no, that's not our responsibility. And so wanting to help her, of course, like I ended up helping her. But I guess that's sort of my thought is like, where is the line of the tutor helping the student between, you know, IT and that sort of area versus the writing center or other similar types of studios?
I'll give a brief response. Just it's pretty contextual to my writing center. But we have students working on similar dissertations and long doctoral projects with table of contents and a lot of formatting stuff that has to be just right. And for those, we do offer workshops where, you know, students can submit the drafts and get some live feedback, and it's like a learning experience for anyone who wants to come. And we do those on Zoom. But in our one-on-one sessions, if students have like really pointed questions, I really want help with this table of contents, we have a doctoral writing specialist who we kind of send those students to, or to myself as the director. And so we don't give the expectation that all the tutors are here ready to do that specific work. And if they have those questions, we can point them to us as a resource. So we're not saying no, but that is like a little boundary that we've set, I guess, in my specific context. So you might have to consider what your context is and what's feasible to communicate to your students who are coming in what you can do. I don't know if anyone else has something to add to that.
I can talk a little bit about a project we've been working on. When we've noticed that students tend to have recurring questions about formatting or about how to use a program, we've started compiling a collection of resources. Sometimes those are YouTube videos, sometimes those are how-to articles that we find online. And then we've been creating sort of an in-house resource handbook. And then, we just have to be careful to update it in case of broken links. But we're trying to work on something so that we have a go-to resource ready for the most commonly asked questions. And we do try to go over what we can in a session with a student to address their questions. But we also realize they might need more out of session practice or explanation too. So having that additional resource we can point them to is really handy for their future reference.
I wonder too, because I know this is something that I'm interested in broadly in terms of thinking about kind of I call it platform literacy, kind of with tutors in terms of navigating kind of technologies. And I think to Erica's point, this question of, we can't expect tutors to necessarily be experts in every potential technology and know kind of how to use them. But I think like resource seeking behavior in terms of how to find kind of answers when you don't know how to use technology is incredibly important, and something that students don't often always bring. If they get stuck, they're just like, I don't know how to do it. And it's crazy because there's a million YouTube tutorials that exist out in the world that show you how to do almost everything now. And I'm always amazed at how infrequently I feel like students draw on kind of that. So I think that that's, at least for me, one of the things when I think about kind of tutors and their preparation for kind of multimodality and working with all of these digital technologies, is that kind of enforcing kind of and helping them develop that type of ability to explore, to play, to find kind of resources and share that kind of mentality with the writers or composers that they're working with.
That's something that we've seen at the Graduate Writing Center here a lot, especially with faculty who haven't explained how to use a library database to find scholarly sources. And fortunately, most of the graduate programs do have a librarian assigned to their program or their college, but we've found oftentimes the graduate students don't know that. So sometimes the resource seeking behavior has created good opportunities for collaboration in order to let the librarians know students aren't hearing about you, and they say, oh, great, well, we'll reach out to their faculty and remind them that we're here and we can do things like this. And sometimes faculty have said, oh, I forgot to do a library unit in my class this semester, thanks to the reminder. So it doesn't always work out, but sometimes it does. And it's good to even use those opportunities to try to find helpers and partners in the institution.
I'll add that, just thinking of Bethany's point, to look for helpers and other people who do have the resources. Our instructional design team does a lot of instructional videos for instructors, but also for students, mostly about navigating Canvas, and how to upload assignments and kind of basic stuff like that. And I know advisors are the ones who might be handling most of those questions, but letting the tutors know letting my tutors know what resources are already there and maybe putting them in a place that's easier to access in the moment is something I'm thinking right now I should probably do more of.
So I have a question for the three of you, if no one else has anything that they wanted to share. I think one of the things that I really appreciated about this workshop and about the activities that you've created, you guys shared that, you're coming from 3 different writing center contexts and, trying to create kind of a heuristic for any kind of writing center to work through. I'm just interested for the 3 of you in working together, how has kind of your partnership together across your institutions helped you kind of further develop this kind of in your own centers?
I can start. So we actually all met in the OWCA Summer Institute, which was wonderful. And so my center, like I said, we are like on the ground in person, but I'm trying to really develop more of our online platform. And so just getting to work with Bethany and Julie, who have so much experience in this area, has really helped me see how we can reach more of our student population. Because we have a lot of military affiliated students and non-traditional students that really need access to these resources that before I came in 2 years ago as director, I feel like we were just kind of ignoring and saying, well, you can't come in person, sorry. So that's been really helpful for me to just see, you can't just copy and paste what you're doing in the in-person setting to the online, just as you can't with teaching in the classroom. So that's been a benefit from my perspective.
I can go, or Bethany, do you have an idea? I think this is more maybe personal than directly related to our content, but getting to know each other's administrative experiences. We're all fairly new to this administrative work in the last few years. And so each of us is developing different things in our own context, and hearing about the different struggles and ways that we are going at it has been so encouraging. So I don't know, that's not directly about multimodal, but in developing more multimodal resources, or in my case, trying to expand how many tutors I am asking for, and working with my higher administrators and getting encouragement from them was the best thing.
I would I would say yes to everything that Julie said. And since the Graduate Writing Center currently is now hybrid, I am kind of going through that transition phase of figuring out how to shift something that had been exclusively remote, especially over the worst of the pandemic, and then figure out, how do I bring it back to campus? How do I find space? How do we sort of integrate the local graduate writing consultants into the undergraduate writing center space without there being territorial issues or anything like that? And so working with, Julie and Allie to kind of get their perspectives and hear about their experiences and the things that have worked for them, or the things that, each one of us in talking to each other realized, oh, I haven't thought of that before. That's a great idea. I need to try that, or I need to rethink how I'm doing a particular service or collaboration. So thank you for bringing us together.